Can you put the link into our chat so I can send it to a couple people, because I couldn't find the link either.
Hello.
Hey there, Aisela. How are you today?
I'm good. I feel like we just did this.
We did just do this a few days ago, but we've got a special treat today, so we're back on. Welcome everybody to Gaia Gossip. This is Gaia Gossip on the Move, because we have a new team member who's leading the way for us out there on the roads. And we're going to be having a lot of conversation around the climate impact stories that are out there, and a lot in the hemp industry. So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. And Aisla, it's good to see you again.
Good to see you. So yeah. we were gonna gossip a little about Maren before we invite her on. So we sent an email last week talking a little bit about Maren and who she's been in a very limited fashion to her Many Voices community and to each of us. And before we bring her in for you guys all to meet her, we just wanted to give you a chance to hear a little bit about what we appreciate about her and why we're so excited to have her be part of this team.
Yeah, so Maren and I met, I can't remember how many years ago now. She reached out while she was actually, it just so happens I have it here. She was in the process of writing her book, H is for Hemp, and getting stories from all over the planet. Maren will be able to tell you a little bit more about that a little later. She pretty much spent 4 years living out of a car, traveling all over the place and getting the stories. And so she reached out to me and said, I understand you're doing some hemp work. You know, I wanted to talk to Indigenous peoples, and what are you doing? And so that was our first conversation. And I have to say, we delved in, I don't know, we probably spent 3 hours on the Zoom call, that first exchange. And we just knew there was something about our connection. We knew that we were going to be spending some time together and getting to know each other and being supportive of each other. And she has done that for us. And she's supporting the industry just across the board, between her stories as a digital storyteller, that impact climate activist that she is, and how she weaves it into all of the hemp industry. She's done a beautiful job of it. So I'm very excited that she's decided to join in our team. Yeah. And, you know, globally, I mean, we're having all sorts of issues on the planet as far as the climate is concerned.
And one of the things that I just loved when I met Maren and heard her story from her was the relentless pursuit of her curiosity. That, you know, that and she'll correct me if I'm remembering this incorrectly, but when I first spoke with her, she talked about how she initially thought, I want to understand more about this refugee crisis that we're having. And she said, I thought, you know, I'll live in my car for a few months and investigate it. And what happened was she lived in her car for 4 years and went to some double digits number of countries and actually followed her question all the way through to understand that the refugee crisis is actually man-made, that it's the result of the ways that we have damaged the planet, that has created resource issues, that has created wars, and that there is the community that she landed in. She didn't start with hemp. She came to hemp through this relentless pursuit of her curiosity about what is causing this harm and this pain and this devastation. She found the hemp community and the ways in which hemp as a plant, if we can switch to using products created from hemp, we can drastically heal our planet. And it's, for me, that was just so inspiring, both in terms of the solutions she found, the stories she followed, and the way that she showed up in this quest for making the world better for others. And it makes me so happy to see all the places she'll take us to on the show as well.
Yeah, her passion and her knowledge, her passion, her drive to get these stories out there, to realize the impact that it's having all over the planet, and how we are creating a lot of climate refugees at this point. You know, there are islands of people, thousands of years that people have been living on, and suddenly now there's no land for them to continue for the next generation. You know, there are all sorts of stories that are out there like that on the planet. And Maren is definitely addressing a number of stories, and particularly how hemp can have an impact in a positive way. So I'm looking forward to this whole series that she's doing with us.
Me too. I hope it goes on for years until we fix everything, which hopefully will be soon. But it's delightful. I can't wait for you guys to see where she is. So it's going to be such an amazing experience. And I really appreciate the work that you do, Alicia, to bring so many people into Her Many Voices so that we can have the benefit of so many voices in this work and the stories.
Yeah, I mean, for you guys, you know, the her out of Her Many Voices makes reference to Mother Earth, the many voices, all of her children. And that's not just those of us in this human form that are, you know, those are the trees, those are the rivers, the birds, the fish. It's all of her children. And so being able to work with the talent that we get, I mean, I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for my entire team and the outreach that we have in community. And Maren is certainly a part of that, that's for sure.
Yeah. Maybe we should stop talking about her and start talking to her. I don't know if this is a good time, or do you have more things you want to say about her? I mean, I think we could go on the whole time and talk about her and probably come up with some really great stuff, but
we could, and I can tell you some stories too, but instead, we'll just wait and embarrass her when she's in front of you all. So let's bring Maren in now. Maren. I know you can hear us talking about you.
That feels like the train just left with an open door and me running along trying to get on.
That's a great visual. Yeah.
So good to see you.
Welcome on board, Nate. Welcome on board.
Well, thank you. Finally, I made it into the open door. So happy. And I thank you for actually resuming how we all met. This is so special. It just made me actually think how, why, and under which circumstances we came together. I mean, Alicia, you and I, we met in the middle of COVID lockdown, where life happened precariously through online meetings. And I remember there were butterflies in my stomach when I met you.
Oh, very sweet, honey. Thank you.
It was such a special meeting, you know, hearing about your story and also about the many, many different angles of history that you take, obviously, due to your own descent and your own history that you've lived. So yeah, I totally second you on, it was sort of a first off meeting, knowing immediately that however and whatever we would do together, it would be a long-term connection. And then, yeah, Aisela, I met you when literally the book was in my hands, very fresh. I think one of the first books actually of the book boxes went out to your address in the United States.
I came with a car full of books, and you were like, "How did you fit them in here?" I was just like, "Do not get between me and a goal."
And this is that book that she's talking about, The H is for Hemp. It is no small piece of literature. Yes. So, it took a moment to get certain things.
Well, and it was printed on hemp, which I think that's a really interesting story for if you're willing to tell a small part of it, because printing it on hemp was quite an ordeal from what I remember.
Oh yeah, actually it was at that time. Took me about 1.5 to 2 years in total to kind of come to that conclusion and understanding that this epiphany being told by the hemp industry that, there's hemp plastic and there's hemp paper and everything can be done and is done, that in the case of paper, it wasn't quite so done at that point. So we're speaking about, when was that? I think it was 2018 when I started researching. It was about 2020, beginning of the year, when I realized, okay, this is a dead end road I'm moving down on. Like, there's gonna be no hemp paper anywhere in the world that I can actually print my book on, because obviously we're talking a photography book, so it does have a bit of special demand. I can't just basically print on a home printer or something. And then I guess it was also a bit the dynamics of COVID itself, because when I reached out to Hanemühle, I think we were already in the COVID lockdown. And I heard that from a lot of people in the industry, and I can actually tell my own account to that. The COVID lockdown made one thing possible, which was that you were suddenly able to reach these, higher level position people in companies that usually are completely unavailable to you. And I remember reaching out to the CEO of Hanemühle on LinkedIn, and I got an answer within 11 minutes to my
And tell us who Hanemühle is, just so.
Hanemühle is the German paper manufacturer who ended up actually developing that special tree-free hemp paper for the book with me. Of course, the book was the initial cause why we started looking into making a book paper together, because Hanemühle does fine art papers for primarily artists and photographers. So that's a whole different world of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was amazing that they stepped up and actually looked into doing a book paper with me. And it took us about 2 years in total to get it down to the point where we were able to really, print the final edition of books. And yes, it came with a bunch of problems. So we lost a couple of books during printing because we realized that there were a couple of things that we hadn't addressed. But nonetheless, there were 700 books, and guess what? They're all gone now. So it's good we're starting this new format of the podcast, because in order to continue telling the stories, I will now have to basically use different media, because the book is, there's a couple more book copies coming back from the United States, and then we're basically down to zero.
I have to say, I am thrilled to be the book mule, for the last few of the books that are left, because we did have a handful left in the States. And so I picked them up, and they will be delivered to Germany in a few days. I'm going to be there for a gathering. So
anybody watching this, please give a big hand to Alicia, because she used to be 10 centimeters taller. She was hauling back all these book boxes for me.
I have been training for this moment. Yes, I've been training for this moment.
Yeah. It's actually quite a heavy book. I mean, each book I think weighs about 1 kilo and 10 or something. Yep. And I do remember actually the book the printer telling me, like, couldn't you make one with like 24 pages instead of 624? And I was like, why do you say that? And he's like, because I'm the one having to carry this really heavy book from one trade fair to the next. After 2.5 years doing that myself, literally throughout the world in backpacks, I so know what he meant.
Well, I will say H's for Hemp is worth it. It's worth the lift. So
thank you.
Reach out to Maren, and who knows, maybe somewhere along the way, someone will find an extra book somewhere in a box.
I have one, but I'm not giving it away.
I know. I have mine too,
and that's not going to me.
Yeah.
Hold on to it. It's an investment in the future.
It is an investment in the future.
Yes.
Yes. We're doing a lot of investments in the hemp future for her many voices. Maren, we're hearing little bells in the background occasionally.
We're about to reach Christmas up here.
Can we see where you are at the moment? Can you?
All right, you're challenging me. I'm gonna have to do slow-mo so I don't disconnect any of my cables of mobile setup because let me tell our audience first. So I am in my, so to speak, home by heart, which is in Austria on a mountain. I am living completely off-grid here. I am on 1800 meters, which is the classic Alp environment. And since we have summer, I have cows surrounding me at the very moment, and that's the jingle bells you're hearing. Actually, I think we might actually see them. So
Yes. Oh,
are you seeing them down
That's
there, like down here?
Yeah, we do see them, and we see a lot of beauty there. That's a beautiful.
And this is actually my solar setup right there. So this is why I'm running on energy, or not so much me, but my computer.
Okay. If there were a way to plug you in, we would need to do that, because I know you could use the extra energy boost with your schedule, that's for sure.
At the current moment, definitely. But I do have to say, this is why I love it so much up here. You know, I have my setup now where I can fully and almost normally work, but it's just, I am confined to sit on my balcony in the open door, whether it's 10 degrees or whether it is 40 degrees. So I'm very much submersed in the elements, and that is, to me personally, a very good way of keeping grounded.
Yeah.
You did write the majority of your book there, didn't you?
I did indeed.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that environment would be very supportive of that.
Actually, all of the creative writing I did up here, which means all of the diary writings or diary entries, and a lot of the, I will say, sort of, you know, research parts that then had to be put together in writing, they happened up here. A lot of the work, like, you know, sort of hardcore work of data and post-production of photography and everything, and that I did have to do in the valley, because it's just, when you're working with a big machine and you have literally 8 external hard drives, then my setup of solar power does run dry pretty quick. And if there's not a solid, you know, amount of sun hours a day, then that doesn't work.
Yeah, I can imagine.
In general, though, that seems like a really wise way to keep your work-life balance. Like if you don't have sun, you run out of sun, that, I don't know, it feels like that would be a good thing for all of us to have some external limits, and the opportunity to go and do the rest of it is nice, but the default is those external limits. I wonder what that would do for us.
Well, it certainly slows every process down a little bit. And I don't mean so much that you're slower in what you work, but you're certainly slower in the way you move. And I keep having that conversation literally all the time. I think a lot of our, excuse my language, but a lot of our human screw-ups, they actually happen because we live in a world of technology that benefits us moving quicker than we can kind of collect our thoughts and make sure that we've actually thought things from the beginning all the way to the end. So shooting an email at somebody that will actually leave a trace of extra problems is sort of the common way of doing things, versus sitting back, breathing in, breathing out, watching the cow for an extra second, and basically going like, wait, if I say that now like this, how is the other person going to receive that message? Is the problem going to be solved, or have I added another 2 problems to the already existing one instead of solving anything? So I think there's also this rhythm of you become extremely aware of what you're using up here. So I will not have my internet connected to my computer unless I'm actually using my internet very actively. I am not leaving my external hard drives attached to the computer unless I'm actually working off them, which means I have to be extremely energy sensitive, I suppose, so to speak. And when you've practiced that for, I mean, I've been doing this now for about 10 years. it kind of engraves in your DNA, which means I will continue doing the same thing when I'm sitting in an office where I actually have, you know, the energy coming out of the plug, where I wouldn't necessarily have to do it. But you just know that there's certain things that will keep us from just blatantly wasting energy or wasting resources. It just, yeah.
You know, we got to pay attention to that across the board. You know, at home, I do little things like the lamp is not being used, it's unplugged. You know, the microwave unplugged, the whatever it is, it's unplugged until I need to use it. And it's those little things that can make a difference if we are all doing those little things. You know, we all contribute in some way, shape, or form. Some of us more than others. But to help in those little everyday kind of behaviors can make a huge difference. And we need it at this point. Oh my God, I'm looking at the news, I'm reading the news, I'm listening to the news this week, and we had the hottest day ever on the planet on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And the day before it said, and I'm sorry, I'm talking globally. And the day before it said it was the hottest day globally. And when they talk about global, we're not talking about any particular region, everybody. We're talking about just across the board. And across the board, the temperature was a little over 17 degrees, a little over 62 degrees. And so, you know, every day it's doing this. So if there are things that we can do, whether it's you have your solar panel or you unplug a lamp or whatever it is, you know, these little things are needed at this point.
Print your book on hemp, I think, was the other one. Print your book on hemp.
And print your book on hemp, yes. I mean, we look at, you know,
if
hemp
you can
paper.
afford it, then do that.
Yeah. And speaking to that, the reason why Maren just said, if you can afford it, do that, is because we are in an industry that we were lied to. People drank the Kool-Aid hearing that the cannabis plant is such an evil plant, and then it was eradicated almost from our natural environment. You know, governments made it illegal. And now it's coming slowly but surely back into the fold. But, you know, with these stipulations, and depending on where on the planet you are, maybe it's not legal to you. But this plant can do so much for us. And it definitely, when it comes to issues around carbon sequestration, those kind of things, look to hemp even more so than looking to those trees that some of them take 150 years to grow. And how much water do they consume daily? And there are all sorts of things that we need to look at. And I think hemp is, well, I'm converted, so I believe that hemp is the way to go in a lot of ways on the planet, including, Maren, we had time with the gentleman who founded Plasma for People.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we did.
Let's talk about that, and let's talk about this trip that you guys are planning on making.
Thank you for always bringing me back to my favorite topics. In fact, I literally just finished writing a blog post for next month with Pure Hemp. Sorry, I'm facing some sort of cross-pollination advertisement here. But I do a climate impact blog for Pure Hemp, which is a hemp rolling paper company. And I just finished that blog on Plasma for People because I think this is such a poster child at the moment. You know, the hemp industry has literally been talking about CBD and, let's say, health-related benefits from hemp that you're officially not allowed to talk about, because if you address that hemp could be, you know, health beneficial, then you're already in that legal gray zone of what you're allowed to say or not. And I thought what they did is such an amazing discovery. So basically, Plasma for People is a team of, it's actually a team of several people, but there's a founder, a co-founder, and then the medical director who Alicia and I have met personally and were closely connected to, or let's say I am closely connected to. And so Mirek is the founder of Plasma for People, and this is a pretty stunning guy who came up with this idea that you could just replace the albumin, which is the core part of blood plasma, It's a protein that you can actually replace that albumin with edestyne. And edestyne is a hemp-derived protein that is doing almost the exact same thing. It can be the filler in blood plasma, which brings the volume to the plasma, but it's also the protein that basically carries this entire process. Now, for everyone who's kind of going like, okay, now why? Why do you need to replace blood plasma with a plant-derived blood plasma? There's actually a lot of issues with blood plasma. So first one is that blood plasma can only be won from actually taking blood from people, extracting the plasma, and then putting it into a what do you call it, blood bank, or yeah, blood bank for how do you say, transfusion?
Transfusions.
Yeah, thank you. And the thing with that is that obviously, you know, blood from people can always contain bacteria, viruses. It can contain any sort of illness that will be passed on with the transfusion. There's a autoimmune reaction that real blood plasma can cause, which is actually quite common. So a lot of the difficulties that you encounter when you need a plasma transfusion is that your own body doesn't really accept it because it's someone else's, and it comes with a sort of different DNA. And granted, this is not the medical way to explain it. But you don't have that issue when you're using the plant-derived one. Also, with the plant-derived plasma, number one, it is cheaper to produce because we're still talking about hemp. Hemp is an agricultural plant. It can be grown all over Europe. It can be grown literally all over the world. We know that. It grows from Iceland all the way down to Africa and to Latin America. So it is a very, very adaptable and resilient plant. And the plasma is made from the nuts or seeds, you know, however you want to call it. And so it's this double take on, you know, when we're talking hemp food, we're now also having the same seed for something that could actually become a real huge game changer for our global, let's say our world, because the global south at this moment is mostly cut out from blood plasma supply, because the cooling chain and Alice, yeah.
I was just going to say, and the fact that you don't have to have this in a refrigerator makes a huge difference. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the plasma for people, that plasma is like a 98% match to what it is that we are actually doing if we are using plasma itself. I think that's the extent of how they have moved forward with their product.
Since I've just literally written that article this afternoon, I think the 97.9% refers to the protein level. And I think that's literally the only thing that really counts. But it is literally, to the body, it is easier to intake or uptake the plant-derived plasma because it doesn't come with this autoimmune issue. We always have that when we have human plasma, because if it's not from your body and not all of the components are exactly the same, then it could actually cause issues. Yeah. But one of the other things, and you mentioned that now, Alicia, is the cooling chain. And the cooling chain, I mean, that was one of the things that really drew my attention, because we're back to energy, we're back to this idea of off-grid. How in the whole world are you going to keep minus 30 degrees to keep blood plasma frozen in, say, Central Africa, where you have 90% of the communities running on a either off-grid completely because they don't have electricity, or in the best case scenario, they're on grid, but it's a very weak grid, and it's one that, you know, keeps coming with blackouts. And that's a very, very common issue, not just in Africa, it's also in Latin America. It's, let's say, the entire global south. So that's one of the reasons why blood plasma has been so completely inaccessible to the global south, because you have to cool it down to minus 30. Then when it thaws, it can remain for only 24 hours within its degree centigrades between 1 and 6 degrees. And how are you going to keep that? I mean, you know, and it is extremely expensive to extract and prepare for transfusion. And that means, I mean, we probably don't even want to know how many billions of euro are going down into the trash because the cooling chain got broken. And Alicia, I know this is a topic very much close to your heart, but I was actually also researching the plasma transfusion needs during the 2010 earthquake in Haiti.
In Haiti.
Yeah.
And I know
Yes.
you've had people from Her Many Voices on the ground. There's a huge necessity to have more blood plasma transfusions for the trauma patients.
Especially, I mean, Haiti, you know, it's in the Caribbean. It's hot there. We're talking about off-grid, as you were discussing. You know, it's not like we can plug in the fridge and make sure everything is good to go. And we're still in that situation. And we do have a mobile clinic in Haiti. And so I'm definitely interested in how this progresses because it is needed.
Yeah.
I think Plasma for People, they hit the target on this one. And I'm hoping that globally they are supported.
They have to pass, I think, one more medical, how do you call that, medical trial, test patients and everything. And once that is done, they're basically ready for market. I mean, it sounds like it would be tomorrow, but it is a long journey that they still have to. And I mean, power to the universe. Please, please, please give donors, give the investors that these guys need to bring that to the global market, because that's not a selfish business idea. It is actually a game changer on the big level.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the first time I was introduced to Plasma for People it's probably at least 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just takes time. So in September, our show is going to be stories from Maren joining Plasma for People, and I believe one other company, correct, on a sailboat, right?
Yeah, actually, I think this was what we were promoting in the beginning, because it was sort of the first really lined up show notes or events. So basically next month in August, I'll be joining up with Plasma for People and also with Ed Lehrberger, who is again a partner of Alicia.
Yes, he's a partner of Her Many Voices at this point.
Yes.
Between Ed Lehrberger and Bernie Perry, we have now, we're expanding Bernie's Restorative Botanicals company. So the three of us are now partners. Yeah, I'm very excited. And I know Ed is very excited about joining you guys. He's a sailor. He goes out there, you know, 1 or 2 times a year. That's his big holiday. Yeah. So he is thrilled to no end. And, you know, he'll have that conversation with Plasma for People. Maybe we get to have a clinic, a site on our campus, which is in Fort Lupton, Colorado.
Yeah,
that would be amazing. That would be amazing. I mean, we shall see. We'll have the personal meeting between Plasma for People and Ed. How much nicer could we do it than on a French hemp sailboat? So that's also a big shout out to my 2 friends, Fred and Fred and Pierre. They have basically supported the book ever since the book has been out, and it was amazing because I don't know these 2 guys. They bought the book, and then I kept seeing posts online, you know, where they were promoting Ages for Hemp, and I kind of was wondering, like, who are these guys? And I'm searching a bit, and I thought that was so insanely amazing what they're doing. So 2 French guys bought a sailboat, outfitted the sailboat as much with hemp as they could at that point, but all done out of their own efforts. So they are looking for sponsors. They're trying to, you know, go the right way. They have that mission and vision of actually doing a whole world trip on their hemp sailboat, and every harbor that they come to, they have a mobile exhibition that they basically just take out of the boat and build up in the harbor and give like a mobile educational exhibition on hemp everything, hemp paper, hemp cloth, hemp for sailing, hemp plastics, hemp or biocomposites, you name it, they got it. And they're connecting to the entire hemp world to make sure that they have samples of materials and samples of products. They're connecting to the hemp world per se, such as they did with me and also with Plasma for People. So this is the funny story. Last year, they reached out to me because they've asked me, I couldn't really help them financially because they were looking for sponsors to have the logos of projects on the sale. Mm-hmm. And I said, guys, I'm really sorry. I'm the classic artist. If there's anything I can do for you, I can do a story or I can do a photo shoot or something of that kind, but I'm not going to be the one to support you with money. And they said, no, we love your network. And if you can share your network with us, that will be it. So I kept, sharing some contacts with them, which they were very happy about. I didn't really feel like I had done too much for them. And then it was last year when I met Plasma for People in Prague. Alicia, this was the conference we both were at. I was just completely blown away by this idea of what we had just talked about. So I made a big post on LinkedIn, and that LinkedIn post, for some reason, spread quite far. And so Hemp for World, that's the name of the French project of the boat. Hemp for World reached out to me and said, Maren, can you just please connect us to these people? We so want to have their logo on our main sail. And I said, sure. Not sure if they're going to be your perfect sponsors because they're also in a sort of, trial where they need a lot of money to go forward with what they're doing. And it ended up in, I think, March of this year, I suddenly received a photo on WhatsApp from Fred, who sent me his main sail that was covered with Plasma for People logo and H is for Hemp underneath. And I said, you guys are so crazy. You should have picked a sponsor who actually would have given you a lot of money.
This is true. This is true. Yeah. I have been, while you're talking, I sent that photo to Mikey, our engineer. Mikey, is it one that you can actually show at this point? Did you get it? Because okay, all right.
Yeah, I love this story, Maren, because it's just there's so much heart to what you're up to. And yet also the heart has such a practical benefit to people to really get a sense of what's happening and what's possible. These are the things that are so inspiring. So I appreciate that. And I love that they are like, well, no, we're just going to put you on there.
I mean, it was fantastic, and it's true. It's really, really true. And I think many people within the hemp industry, probably also Alicia, you have also experienced that. There's a very amazing dynamic that is very unique to the hemp space, which oftentimes comes driven from the heart, where you kind of say like, oh, you dreamers, what are you doing? What's all this? Like, that doesn't have any business sense. But then at the same time, you make a post, you are connected to people. And what I realize is the space of hemp worldwide is so small still that most of the time, all of the players pretty soon. Like, we come together at the industry events, we meet at the conferences, you become family pretty immediately, because if you're stupid enough to invest into that plan, you're family.
Yes. Oh, okay. Mikey said he's got it now, I think.
Yep.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, let's have a look at the Hemp for World sailboat, because those guys really need a big shout out.
So it is on the screen now, Mikey, because we can't see. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Maren, tell us about the sail itself. First of all, is that a hemp sail?
I am not quite sure. I do have to investigate that when we finally meet up in person. I do know that they really try to outfit the boat as much as possible with hemp. I know they have been thinking about the whole rigging of hemp, but I also know that this is quite expensive and quite difficult to get because it's specialty made, and usually it's ancient and historic sailboats, or let's say vessels, historic vessels for museums that are being outfitted with hemp, just because it is extremely difficult to make it. There is one rope manufacturer still left in Sweden, who actually does the hemp rigging for boats, and they basically are busy with outfitting one single sailboat. It's the what's it called, East Indiaman in Göteborg on the on the west coast of Sweden, and I mean, it is hard. So we'll see. I will definitely. It's going to be our first real podcast from on the road, or at least produced on the road. I think since we are on the boat literally until a couple days before we have our next podcast episode, we'll probably set that to 1 month back so we can produce it. Because we do also want to include the visuals and some video and obviously the O-tone audios. But nonetheless, I think our next episode could probably be on Morocco, where I spent a couple months ago quite some time with the clans in the Reef Mountains, investigating on the entire situation of the hashish production and how hashish plants, I mean, it's still cannabis, are actually also being used for industrial purposes, such as building houses. So together with a colleague from Spain, I have produced a really, I think a really sweet reportage on the entire situation in the reef, which is a human rights story, which is about hemp legalization, cannabis legalization, but which also shows a lot of these discrepancies that we actually introduce from the global north coming into the global south and literally following our very hardcore business interests. So it was quite an interesting and very different story to what I've ever seen on the media concerning Morocco and hashish production and this entire, poor communities. Yes, of course, the communities are still quite impoverished, which obviously has a lot to do with hashish growing still being sort of medium. It's not 100% legal. It is accepted, but it's not legal, so it comes with a lot of setbacks. And I think the first episode from On the Road or On the Move is going to be the Morocco one. And then once we have had just a couple of weeks of time to put together our entire sailboat experience, then this will come on.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited. And the other thing I want to let people know is that because Maren speaks 74 languages, Manny, that when she goes to these different places, she'll be speaking to folks in their native tongue whenever she can. And so we're going to have the opportunity for a very diverse experience in terms of people hearing from people with different perspectives and actually in their own language. We'll have subtitles and translations. Mikey's in charge of that. He's excited about it. And so those of us who are limited to English or primarily fluent in English will be able to still receive what she's talking about. But I was really excited about that because it, like, when you're on the boat, you'll be talking to the French folks in French, and that way that there'll be just a little bit more of that feeling of really being in these different places and talking to people in their own perspectives and words.
I mean, I don't want to detest of what you just said, but I do have to backpedal a little bit on 47 languages.
It's just a lot. We did some previews, and at least it was like, can you do a preview in French? She's like, yes. You do a preview in Spanish? Yes. You do a preview in German? I'm like, how many languages are we going to roll out here? It was fantastic.
I was trying to get her to do Arabic and Turkish, but those are two she's working on. Inshallah, yeah, inshallah.
Well, yes. And Maren was recently named as the Secretary General of the Federation of International Hemp Organizations. And so, I say it in a fun way, but also it feels really special to me that they chose someone who has so much on the ground experience in all these different communities and has really done the work to be able to meet people where they are, because that's so important.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And, and that's part of the reason why we have you here, Maren, because there is something about you where you go into community and you speak to people, you go where they are. And, so physically you are where they are, and there's an exchange that happens between you and someone else in that kind of environment. So we're grateful. I would say anybody who gets an opportunity to work with you, are grateful.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I can only return that I'm grateful for each and every person as well as project that I've been allowed to work with within the hemp space. it's always an honor when people open the door, and I think it's maybe a part of my upbringing that my parents had taken me in a very, very early on age into different countries, different cultures, and always taught me, you be respectful, you sit back and you observe, and don't make assumptions, and don't take the word unless you're given the word. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a very, very valuable lesson, because it probably also maybe informed the way I have taken on journalism, which is also not the classic way of journalism, I would say. I, obviously mix quite a lot between using the camera, using the pen, recording, just listening. And I think listening to people is something so important. It's one of these it's a little bit like sitting up here and listening and observing the cows. There's something really beautiful, because if you can take the time to observe, and if you can take that inner calm that it takes to just hold a space, because sometimes it is very uncomfortable when you're sitting back and you're observing and you cannot intervene with things happening, mm-hmm. because you're not allowing yourself, or the situation is not allowing you to intervene with it. It can be beautiful. Sometimes it's absolutely wonderful, when people are creating a huge mess and you can just step back and sit back and say, this is not my issue, but I will be here to observe it. It can also be quite a blessing. But then at the same time, especially in let's say social justice environments, or let's pick a very drastic one, when I went to Ukraine last year, and you have to witness situations where you would very much so like to intervene and change the world right in that moment, at that very point in time, or help people, and you can't. The only thing you can do is record their story and take their story and carry it to the outside. It can also become quite heavy and quite a burden to carry, because people don't just share their story with you, out of a little mood of happiness or nice to meet you. Usually people do open up in the deeper sense and share a story with you because they also expect something back from you. They expect back that you take their story seriously, and that you will process the story in a way that will put amplification to whatever the matter is that they have given you or shared with you. And so I guess this is what I really burn for. And I am still pretty fresh and new in that position with FIHO. It is a very challenging and very interesting position. It has opened a number of new doors, let's say, into worlds that I had very, short-term engagement with, such as the United Nations, or also the ASTM, the American Standards. What is the organization? There's a lot of policy work that is completely new to me. At the same time, if it will be granted that I carry my storytelling in a way into these very policy and very rigid spaces to actually open minds and sort of connect the theory with the practical parts, that's a bit my vision. And of course, I'll I'll learn a lot in the months to come, and I'll probably also be redirecting my own course and how I do the work and what's expected of me. So I see it as a huge learning and growing experience. But at the same time, I think I also have to be or stay truthful to my own roots and bring into these spaces what's my expertise, and the expertises that I have listened to, I think, meanwhile, probably hundreds of stories from people that become very personal.
And out of those stories, is there anyone, I mean, this plant does so much. People are using it in all sorts of ways, right? Is there anyone that you've come across that is working on helping heal the oceans, the waters with this plant? I personally have not come across anyone. So I'm wondering with all of the folks that you've come across.
If I can take the word ocean out, then I could probably name a couple. So I know that there's a I don't know if it's a group of scientists or one scientist, but I do know of a scientific project in Florida in the United States that's very particularly looking into how to clean waters with hemp.
Okay.
I sort of cross-bordered with other phytoremediation projects that have also been concerned with how to clean water from uranium, how to clean water from any nuclear contamination. That was in South Africa. And the hemp plant allows, especially, and that's actually an interesting one because we always think hemp has to grow very large and over a month in order to do the job of phytoremediation or really cleaning a body of anything. Could be a body of soil or it could be a body of water. But in fact, it's the germination phase for water where hemp does its big, magic. So it's basically these couple first days when the hemp nut starts germinating, and that's when it uptakes so much of, especially the uranium in the sense, or that's the project that I know of in Africa, in South Africa, and so it's. I think these are all things that are coming, but you guys mentioned it in the very beginning, and I am seeing this increasingly now with my position for FIHO, where I'm reaching out a lot to Asia, to Africa, to Latin America, and basically have exchanges during the week with, multifold number of countries. Unfortunately, even hemp is not yet legalized in all of the countries of the world. Right. That's a huge drawback because there's not too many plants that can actually, do the job of remediating that many different contaminants. And
and I was asking in particular about the waters because a couple of months ago we were talking about there are fish off the coast in Florida, as you were talking about what they're doing there, fish off the coast of Florida that were just flipping. They were going in one direction. They weren't swimming. Whoa. And it's a big time mystery for that particular region. And now, just a couple of days ago, there was a story released, or a number of stories released in Brazil. I think it was somewhere, I've heard 13 and I also heard 15 sharks were tested, and they tested positive for cocaine.
Yep. Yeah.
And so, we're looking at this going, well, why are these things happening? And it obviously is seemingly pointing